Hello and welcome, as always, to the Big Blue View YouTube channel. I'm your host, Ed Valentine, editor of Big Blue View. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. All right, today the New York Giants held their 9th OTA of the spring, their final one with media access prior to next week's mandatory mini camp. Media will have access to that. I believe it's Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm planning to be there, so please check out our coverage of the mini camp during both of those days. But today, let's talk a little bit about OTA 9 and some of the things that we saw. And today was a fantastic day for Malik Nabers, Giants first round pick, 6th overall, 2 phenomenal catches on deep balls. Neither of which really looked like they were going to be catchable. One was a great catch over Cordell Flott, leaping, stretching catch. Another one was a sprawling catch in the back of the end zone. Another ball that you would say was not perfectly thrown by Locke, but where Nabers helped his quarterback out quite a bit. But we saw Nabers catch a touchdown pass from Daniel Jones during a 7-on-7 red zone drill. We saw him make a terrific catch early in practice or during the individual drills portion of practice. And when I look at Nabers, you can watch film on Nabers, you can watch him on television. You think, you hear the words, he's explosive, he's this, he's that. Some people thought he was the best wide receiver in the draft, maybe better than Marvin Harrison Jr. And I've been going to training camps for the New York Giants now. I've been covering the Giants here at Big Blue View since 2007. I've had access to at least training camp since 2008. And what I will say is that with some athletes, it looks different when they do things. When Odell Beckham burst on the scene with the Giants, it looked different when he practiced. His movement just looked different than everybody else's movement. When Saquon Barkley first came to the Giants, pre-injury Saquon Barkley, his first couple of training camps with the Giants, when Barkley moved, it looked different than when everybody else moved. It looked quicker, it looked crisper, it looked more electric. And that's what you're seeing when you watch Malik Nabers, when you get a chance to see him on the field, when you get a chance to see him do what he does. It looks different than the other wide receivers. It looks different than Jalen Hyatt. It looks different than Darius Slayton. It looks different than anybody else on the roster when he's out there running around, when he's doing what he does. And that's really the only way I can describe it. You can see when he moves around, you can see why the Giants drafted him 6th overall. You can see the kind of player that they think he's going to be, that his athleticism tells you that he could be. And you can see with the kind of plays that he made on Thursday, the kind of difference that he can make for an offense. Both of the long passes that he caught from Drew Lock were balls that were probably not balls that you would say were easy. They're definitely not easy catches. I don't know what the percentage chance of catching either of those passes was. I mean, I have to admit, media was 70 yards away, 80 yards away on the opposite end of the field from the end zone. The offense was going toward. We had a gaggle of offensive linemen and defensive players in front of us. So our view of a lot of what was going on today was blocked. But you can see it, like I said, it just doesn't look like everybody else. It doesn't look like what Darius Slayton does. It doesn't look like what Isaiah Hodgins does. So you have to look forward to what Malik Nabers can do for this offense and what he can do for a very young, very talented passing group or wide receiver group. Jalen Hyatt, third round pick a year ago. Wan'Dale Robinson, second round pick a couple of years ago. Darius Slayton, still part of this roster. So it's exciting to think if the Giants get good enough quarterback play, good enough offensive line play, it's exciting to think about the possibilities with the speed and the varied skill sets that they have at wide receiver. It'll be interesting to see beyond the guys that I mentioned when it comes to Isaiah Hodgins, Isaiah McKenzie, Gunnar Olszewski, and Allen Robinson, the veteran wide receiver who's had a long and successful career, several other guys. It's going to be interesting to see how many wide receivers the Giants keep and how they round out that receiver group. But the top of that depth chart should have Giants fans excited, and mostly Giants fans should be excited about the potential of what Malik Nabers could do for this offense. All right, I mentioned quarterback play, have to mention Daniel Jones. Jones, as he had done throughout OTAs so far, only did the individual portion of practice and the 7-on-7 portion of practice on Thursday. Looked really sharp, was 5 of 6 in the red zone drill that he did. Each of his 5 completions went for touchdowns. Moved to his left, moved to his right. I don't know if he was going full speed, but he looked comfortable. He doesn't limp at this point. He doesn't look like he's favoring the leg at all. He drops back and he plants off that leg. So really, there's no question for me that Jones will be ready for training camp. Excuse me. There's no question that he'll be ready for week 1. Now, we can question, of course, how well he will play. And that remains to be seen. How well will he play? Will he keep the job? If the Giants don't do well this year, will the Giants take him off the field and play Drew Lock simply to avoid paying the injury guarantee to Jones in 2025? Those things we don't know. But what we can see right now is that Jones looks like he will be ready for training camp, and he looks absolutely to be on track to be ready to open the season. Just also wanted to mention that once again we saw Brian Daboll, Giants head coach, calling plays. Daboll hanging out near the huddle, hanging out behind the line of scrimmage. Offensive coordinator Mike Kafka well off to the left, away from the action. So increasingly, every time we see the Giants practice, we see Daboll calling the plays. Daboll won't admit at this point that he's going to be the play caller, but all signs are pointing in that direction. And I've said before that I think that's probably the right decision for Daboll to make. He's been a very good play caller throughout his career. This is his offense. It's not Mike Kafka's offense. This is Brian Daboll's offense with some input from Kafka, with some input from the other offensive coaches. But this is his offensive scheme. And we know that whether you consider Daboll on the hot seat or not, we know he's got some pressure on him entering 2024. So he might as well do what he does best, run this offense the way he wants it run. So as much as I generally prefer CEO type head coaches, guys that allow their coordinators to do what they do, this has really always been Brian Daboll's offense. And in this particular instance, I think that's the best way for Brian Daboll to serve this team, is to go ahead and take full control of the offense, and it looks like that's what he's doing. All right, got to talk a little bit about the offensive line. We saw the standard, normal offensive line, first team alignment: Andrew Thomas, left tackle; Jermaine Illuminor, left guard; John Michael Schmitz at center; John Runyon at right guard. And on Thursday, with Evan Neal not doing any work during the team periods of practice, we saw Josh Ezeudu at right tackle. And, that's all the same things that we've seen throughout OTAs. Ezeudu's been at right tackle most of the time. If Neal hasn't been working, it's been Runyon at right guard and Illuminor at left guard all the way through. And every time I post that alignment, every time I talk about that alignment, there's a segment of the Giants fan base, a segment of our commenters at Big Blue View, who get upset. They can't understand why Illuminor's on the left and Runyon's on the right, and Runyon's better at left guard, and Illuminor played on the right side at right tackle the last 2 years. And what are the Giants doing? And why have they got this alignment all screwed up? And you need to get over yourselves, people. You just need to get over yourselves. Jermaine Illuminor has played every position on the offensive line except center during his career. He can play either side, tackle, guard, doesn't matter to him. He's a professional. He'll do the job wherever the Giants put him. Carmen Brasillo, Giants offensive line coach, knows him well enough to know that, he Illuminor can show up tomorrow at practice, and Brasillo can say, "Hey, go play right tackle today," and Illuminor will be fine. He's done it enough. He's a vet. He's enough of a veteran that moving around like that at a moment's notice or whatever, he's done that all throughout his career. It's not going to bother him. John Runyon, people say, "Oh, he's such a better left guard," and everybody wants to make a big deal out of the fact that when he was signed, Runyon said, "Well, given my choice, I would prefer left guard." We spoke to Runyon on Thursday, and he said, earlier in my career, maybe that was true. He said, but now, he said, that really doesn't matter. He said, it's never really mattered where you put me. He said, I'll play wherever. He said, I'll figure it out if you have to stick me at tackle, where he's played a handful of snaps in his career, as in emergency situations. But he's spent the last 2 years of his career mostly at right guard. He said now that it's second nature. It feels normal. There's no hesitancy. There's no awkwardness. It's not uncomfortable for him at all. And I went and I looked at his Pro Football Focus grades. They're mostly consistent. His pass blocking efficiency is mostly consistent throughout his career. His run blocking scores are consistent. Honestly, there's no evidence based on the numbers. There's no real evidence that he's better on the left than he is on the right. The Giants have put him on the right. I asked Brian Daboll about having him on the right, and I asked Daboll, about putting him in between center John Michael Schmitz and right tackle Evan Neal. And he basically admitted that Runyon communicates well, that he felt like that the Giants feel like having that veteran, that guy, that experienced guard playing in between the second-year center in Schmitz and the third-year tackle who still has a lot to prove in Evan Neal. They think that's important. That's a big reason why they've done it. And look, I'm not going to get crazy about Josh Ezeudu, playing tackle in May and June in shorts and t-shirts and no pads, and you have to put somebody there to get through practice. And look, if Ezeudu's going to be part of the roster in 2024, and I have to believe that he is going to be, then the opportunity for him to play multiple positions throughout the spring and through training camp, if that's what the Giants do, is good for him. If he's going to be their sixth offensive lineman, which it sort of looks like that's where this is trending. Ezeudu showed the ability to play every position except center when he was in college at North Carolina. The opportunity for him to practice all across the offensive line is a good thing. It will help prepare him for the season. It will help prepare him for whatever the Giants might need him to do when we get to live action, when we get to games. And so far this spring, we've seen Ezeudu, inside, outside. We've seen him left, right. We've seen him at every position except center. And for me, that's not problematic. For me, that's a good thing. Brasillo said the other day that this is the time of year to move guys around. He said eventually when you get into training camp, as you go through training camp, you would like to settle that down a little bit. But he said this is the time of year for guys to move around. So I have no problem with Ezeudu getting practice reps wherever the Giants choose to put him. There was also some concern. I've seen I've seen a couple of the media folks talking about the pressure, coming from Kayvon Thibodeau or whoever, guys getting into the backfield. Brian Burns wasn't at practice on Thursday, but Burns had a couple of really active practices, his first couple of OTAs that media saw. And look, I'm not going to worry about that much right now. The fact of the matter is this is practice in shorts and T-shirts. These guys can't be as physical as they'd like to be. I'm sure that there are things that the offensive linemen would do that are a little bit more physical that in an effort to keep these guys out of the backfield. But at some point in time, these are your teammates and you're in shorts and T-shirts and they're supposed to be non-contact practices. So there's only so much that you can do. So I'm not worrying about that right now, and I'm not worrying about, Brian Burns beating Josh Ezeudu in a practice or Kayvon Thibodeau beating Ezeudu off right tackle in a practice, because that's what Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns ought to do to a backup right tackle. That's what they should do, especially in these kinds of situations where where there's no pads. So I'm not really worried about that. And again, when it comes to the alignment, I think that for the most part, you should be happy with the fact that they're running the same group out there in terms of, leaving Runyon at the right side, Illuminor at the left side. Guys aren't jumping around from position to position, each period or every couple of snaps. Guys aren't being moved in and out, which was the case last year and which I thought sort of helped lead to the disaster that the Giants offensive line became. When it comes to Evan Neal, I've said this before. I don't know exactly how long the leash is, but the way that this is set up, what the Giants are telegraphing here is Illuminor will go to right tackle if and when the Giants decide to pull the plug on Evan Neal. And then what will happen is that you have Josh Ezeudu, whose first position is probably his primary position, probably his best position overall, the one where he has the most experience, both collegiately and in the NFL, is probably left guard. So what you will have is a competition at that point with Ezeudu, veteran guard Aaron Stinney, who played more than 800 snaps last season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at left guard. Maybe Neal, maybe Marcus McKethan. I'm not sure about that, but probably a competition at this point between Ezeudu, Stinney, and perhaps Evan Neal. There's no guarantee if the Giants move Evan Neal off right tackle, they're not just going to walk him over to left guard and say, you're now the starting left guard. If he wins that job, he wins that job. My guess is, to be honest with you, that he probably won't initially. But Right now he's not really taking any live practice reps as he rehabs from his ankle surgery. So for him to learn a new position, for him to do the kinds of things necessary to really get comfortable at left guard doesn't really seem possible right now. So I think, in all honesty, if Neil doesn't doesn't hold down the right tackle job, Illuminor goes over there, and it's probably either Stinney or Azudu at left guard, maybe with Neil if he eventually shows that he's comfortable enough. But I think pretty much that's the plan that the Giants seem to be telegraphing at this point. And we'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens as we get to mini camp next week, as we get to training camp, as Neil gets healthy enough to get out on the field. And hopefully he can stay healthy, which he hasn't been able to do the last couple of years. Hopefully he can stay healthy and show once and for all whether or not he deserves to be a starting right tackle in the NFL. All right, I think that's enough for today, Giants fans. Please, support Big Blue View. Keep reading our content, on the website. Keep checking us out here on YouTube, on at big_blue_view on Instagram. Check us out on Facebook. Follow at Big Blue View on Twitter. You can follow me at ed.valentine over on Threads if you want to do that as well. So please do all of that and make sure that you check out our mini camp coverage next week as well. All right, thank you for listening. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.